to Hooked on Guitar, the show that teaches you how to play guitar at home by playing along with me. I'm Dan Rao from Gunner Guitar Studies in Kitchener, and this is episode number 15. In this show, we're going to learn the techniques for various types of bending, string bending that is, and applying them to the pentatonic scales and the modes that we have learned so far. Now, you may want to keep a pen or a pencil handy. At the end of the show, an address will be shown where you may write in and receive a transcript in lesson form of the show. That will help with any questions you may have and be a good reference for future practicing. And again, let's begin by tuning so that what you play at home sounds like what I play here, the low E or 6th string, and I am still down a semitone from last show. And the A or 5th string. The D or 4th string. And the G or 3rd string. The B or 2nd string. And the E or 1st string. All right, at the end of last show, I had mentioned that you should get some lighter strings on your guitar just to make it easier to bend the strings and vibrato them, etc. Now, I've got a fairly light set on this guitar, and because they're new strings and because the strings are light, I'm getting a little bit of buzzing there. I couldn't quite get rid of that when I set the guitar up, so we'll just have to live with it for now. But after you do change the strings on your guitar and go to a lighter set, it sometimes takes a few weeks for the guitar to get used to the strings and for the neck to bend accordingly so that you don't get that buzzing. Right now I couldn't get rid of them, so we'll just have to live with that, and let's go on with the show. Now, what string bending is it's a popular technique used in all styles of music, from just rhythm playing right up to soloing, and it's an embellishment that adds flavor or feel to what you're playing, and it's basically you're going to bend from one tone to another. For instance, if I was playing in A minor pentatonic and I wanted to play, say, this note up to this note, okay, just something like this, I could bend this note here to sound like this one, and it would just give it much more flavor. See? There's a little more flavor, a little more interesting sound. So that's what bending is all about. And the technique I like to use for bending is you generally bend strings 1, 2, and 3 away from the edge of the guitar, so you bend them upwards. And strings 4, 5, and 6, I generally bend downwards. Just so that you're not bending the strings over the edge of the guitar. As you see, that doesn't work very well. Unless the bend is a small one, or what we call a micro bend, where you're just bending the string a bit, I usually tend to use at least 2, 3, or 4 fingers. So if I was in 5th position and bending the 6th fret, I would use, of course, my 2nd finger there and my 1st, and bend that way. So you always try to bend with at least 2. If I was bending the 7th fret, I would use 3 fingers. And the 8th fret, I would use all 4 fingers. Okay, so very seldomly do I bend with 1. Now, for leverage, I'd like to keep my thumb up towards the top of the back of the neck here. It doesn't have to be right over or anything like that, just so that you can get some pull upwards on your fingers, like that. Now, bending, this is probably the most critical point of bending, is that you want to bend using your wrist and your thumb power. You don't really want to use your fingers. See, a lot of people, when they bend, they try to push with their fingers like this. There's a couple of reasons that doesn't work. Number one, you're not going to get very much strength. And number two, you're going to bend up, and then when you try to come back down, you're either going to let the string out from under your finger like that, or you'll end up grabbing one of the other strings that you don't want to sound. It'll come back and it'll snap like that. It just doesn't work out. So what I like to do is try to keep, when I'm bending, try to keep the angle of my finger to the fretboard the same. I use my wrist and my thumb and push upwards like that. And what that does is it keeps your fingertip right on the string. And when you come back down, it keeps it nice and silent. All you end up doing is pushing these strings out of the way and back. And you'll only hear the string that you want to sound. Let's try that in 5th position with your 3rd finger, so on the 2nd string. So your 1st finger is 5th fret, 2nd finger 6th, 3rd finger on the 7th fret. Get right up on your fingertips, thumb on the back here, and then remember, just hold your fingers rigid. You don't want to push with them at all. You just kind of lift your wrist like this for the bend. We won't worry about how far we bend right now. Just try to get that bend to work. Keep trying that at home. If you haven't got the light strings on, it doesn't matter. Just try and bend as far and as best as you can. And that's how we bend. Let's go to string number 4, and we'll use the same fret, same position. And we're going to try and bend this note downwards, okay? And just the reverse, you just kind of pull down with your wrist. Keep your fingers rigid, keep them the same angle to the fretboard, so that when you bring the bend back, all you'll hear is the note that you're playing. Now, the first bend we're going to talk about is a semitone bend. Now, what a semitone bend is when you strike the note and you bend a half a step or 1 fret. For instance, if I was going to do a semitone bend here on the 2nd string 7th fret, I would play the note and try and bend it so it sounded like the 8th. See that? There's the 8th fret. Then what I do is I bend the 7th fret to sound like the 8th. It's called a semitone bend, and you want to practice these just to get a feel for them so you can use them whenever you like. And I like to actually play the note I'm bending to first, just to check for accuracy. So let's try this at home. Play the 8th fret with your little finger, and then taking that finger off, use your other 3 fingers and bend up until you hit that note. That is a semitone bend. Let's try a semitone bend on the 3rd string. Let's go down to 3rd position, and we'll use our 4th finger. So you're going to actually use all 4 fingers, even though the 4th one is the final one doing the bend. So what we would do here is I'm going to reach out and play the 7th fret. That's kind of the target note that we want to bend to, and then get into position and bend all strings until you hit that note. That is a semitone bend. You want to practice these so that you can just hit them without even thinking about it. Just so they're accurate and you can play them with ease. That is a semitone bend. A song that uses semitone bends is the first solo from Maggie May by Rod Stewart. And I'll play a little bit of the chords first just to set up the song, and then I'll play the solo. I'll slow it down a little bit too so you can see what I've done. And this uses semitone bends. Slow that lead section down just a little bit so you can see where the semitone bends are. They were mostly on the 7th fret of the 5th string. And it's and that was semitone bends with Maggie May. Let's move on and do full tone bends. The technique is going to be the same, only we are going to strike the note and bend it up a whole tone. And that would be something like this. If I was going to, again, be in 5th position, key of A minor pentatonic, I'm going to bend the 7th fret so it sounds like the 9th. Now on the 3rd string, you really have to push, because you've got to push some of the other strings out of the way, some of the thicker strings. It takes a bit of practice. A little bit more buzzing there than I would like, but let's try that once more at home. play the 9th fret, that's what you want to play here, and then bend the 7th fret until you hit that note. Mine's cutting out a little bit. Let's move up to the 2nd string. It's probably a little easier, and we'll bend the 7th fret up to the 9th fret there. Let's play the 9th fret, and then bend the 7th fret with 3 fingers until you hit that whole tone. Let's try that again. Play the 9th fret and bend 1 whole tone. That is a whole tone bend. Let's move down to 3rd position, and we'll play in the key of G minor pentatonic, and we're going to bend the 6th fret to sound like the 8th. This is kind of a popular little thing anyways. Kind of a popular thing that's used, so we're going to bend the 6th so it sounds like the 8th. We'll play the 8th first, and then using all 4 fingers, bend the 6th until you hit that note. There it is there. Try that again. Play the 8th and bend the 6th till it sounds like the 8th. That is a full tone bend. It's probably easier on strings 1 and 2 for right now, but do try and work it in so you can do that on string 3 also. Just going to retune a little bit here. Bending tends to put those out of tune a little bit at first. Make sure you tune your strings from below. They'll stay in better for bending. Here's the G or 3rd string again if you'd like to tune at home. Maybe out tune from bending. And the B or 2nd string. And let's check my E string, it's in tune. And the E or 1st string. Being we were bending those 3, they may be out. And I've got a little riff put together here in the key of A major pentatonic that uses a whole tone bend. If you remember back from episode 13, A major pentatonic is played there in 2nd position with a root being right here on string 6, fret number 5. And the riff goes something like this. So what I was doing there was this, and then I bent a whole tone so the 5th fret sounded like the 7th, and then played the 5th. That is in a major pentatonic scale. Let's try that at home. 3, 4. 2nd fret, 5th fret, 2nd fret, 5th fret. Put all your fingers on the string, bend a whole tone, and play the note unbent. And that is A major pentatonic, a little riff using a whole tone bend. Let's shift that up to C major pentatonic. Let's try that. C major pentatonic would be in 5th position with our little finger on the C note, fret 8 on string 6. There's our major pentatonic note, and then the riff just plays the same. A little bit easier to play up there to get that bend. Let's try that at home. Play 5th fret, 8th fret, 5th fret, 8th fret, then bend the whole tone so it sounds like the 10th fret, and unbent. And that is full tone bends and a little example there to practice that with. I'd like to talk now about bends and releases. Now, what you do for those notes is you strike the note and bend it up a semitone or a full tone, depending on the bend you want to use, and then you release the string back to the original note, keeping the pressure on the string while doing so. Now we kind of follow the same technique as for bending, where you just push it up and keep your fingers the same angle to the fretboard. But when you release it, it's a little trickier because you've got to actually not squeeze or let the bend down, but still keep the pressure on the string so that the note doesn't die on you. So it's a bend and release. Okay, let's try that on the 2nd string, 7th fret with our 3rd finger, and of course you're going to use your 1st and 2nd fingers also. Let's do a semitone bend, so we're going to bend up to the 8th fret and then back to the 7th, and it'll sound something like this. And you still want to hear the 7th fret when you come back down. So that's why you have to keep that angle of your finger to the fretboard exactly the same, so that you only have that string sounding when you come back. Let's try this at home. Play the 7th fret on string 2, bend it up a semitone, and back down again. Do a little quicker so that the note rings a little louder. That is a semitone bend and release. Let's try, let's go up to the key of B minor pentatonic. And on the 10th fret with our 4th finger, let's try a whole tone bend and release. That would sound something like this. Whoops, that's not what I want to hit. And nice and smooth. Let's try that at home with your little finger. It takes a little bit more practice. 3, 4, bend up a whole tone. And let it off again. There's our target note. And once more. And again. And that is a full tone bend and release. A song that uses that is the lead guitar solo from the song Black Water by the Doobie Brothers. And hopefully I can play this and it won't rattle too much. I seem to play this because of the light strings. I play a little hard and I get a little bit of rattling, but it sounds something like this. This song's in the key of D major, using the D major pentatonic at the 7th fret, and and the root would be there, and it switches into the D minor pentatonic at the 10th fret just for a second, and it goes something like this. Lots of bends and releases in there. I'll try that a little quicker. 3, 4. Using both the major and the minor pentatonics with full tone bends and releases. Now in the transcripts I've got a little exercise put together using full tone bends and releases, and this starts out in the key of B using the minor pentatonic at the 7th fret, and then switches down to the Mixolydian mode in the key of B also, so we just move down about 3 positions, and it goes something like this. Start out on the 7th fret in the 7th position, and you bend the 10th fret a full tone and release it. Then play the 7th fret twice. Now shoot down to 4th position on the 4th string, and we're going to bend and release the 6th fret a semitone. Play the 4th fret, 6th fret again, bend, release a semitone, and land on the root for the Mixolydian or major pentatonic scale. So once more at regular speed. And once more. And I'll slow that down once more and we'll try this at home. 3, 4. And to the 6th fret. Of course, if you wanted to play that in a different key, you would just move it down 2 frets to be in the key of A. And key of A. I'd like to, once you can master the bends and releases so you can hit them fairly accurately without having to play the target note first, then you'd like to try pre-bends. Now, these are called pre-bends or ghost bends, and what you do is you bend the note first. Say we're going to bend the 8th fret up to the 10th fret. You bend it before you play it, and then you play it. And then you can, a popular option is to let the bend off, but it's a pre-bend. You want to hit the note before you even play it. You want to bend up to the note. It takes a little bit of practice. You have to get feel for that. So there's my target note. Bend it, then play it, and then you let it off. That's called a bend or ghost bend and release. This is a very nice bluesy kind of thing to do. And the song that utilizes pre-bends quite nicely is the song Black Magic Woman by Santana, and it is in the key of D minor, or D Aeolian, as we learned in previous episodes. Now, I'll just play the song right from the beginning just to set up the solo, and I'll let you know when the pre-bends are going to start. And the pre-bends. And I'll slow that pre-bend section down a little bit. 3, 4, and... That uses those pre-bends quite effectively. It sounds very bluesy, very Spanish sounding also. And if you'd like to try a couple of pre-bends, let's try one on the third string, just a semitone. Now we're going to be in A minor pentatonic, and we'll pre-bend the seventh note up to the, or seventh fret, sorry, up to the 8th fret and play it. And then let it off, kind of a ghost bend kind of thing. Let's try that at home. Bend, using 3 fingers, bend the 7th fret up to the 8th and release it. Let's try the, let's just play the 8th fret just to get the idea of where we're going to pre-bend to. And good, and that is a pre-bend and release, or sometimes called a ghost bend. Now in the transcripts I've got a little lick made up in the key of A Aeolian, and it uses ghost bends and releases and goes something like this. I could replace the pre-bends with just the actual notes and you get this sound. But the pre-bends just add some flavor to it. A little quicker. Bluesy sound. Let's try this at home. You're going to bend the 7th fret on the 1st string up until you think it's going to be about a semitone in distance. Play it and let it off. You want to hear that bend come down. Play the 5th fret. Now, using your 1st and 2nd fingers, you want to bend a whole tone on the 2nd string and then release that. Then lift your 2nd finger off. Play the 5th fret, 2nd string, 5th fret, 3rd string, and 7th fret on string 4. And I'll try that once more slowly, and then we'll try it at home. And we'll try that once more at home. 3, 4. And those are pre-bends. The last type of bend I'd like to talk about is something called unison bends. Now what unison bends are is when 2 notes are played together and either like strummed together or played separately, I guess. but they sound together. So it's called a unison bend because you're bending the lower note up until it sounds like the higher one. Unison bending is done usually on strings 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. A little harder on that third string on the acoustic, but we'll talk about that in a second. And an example of a unison bend on strings 2 and 3 is bending the 8th fret on the third string up to the 5th fret on the second string. Now what I'm going to do is put my first finger on the 5th fret of the second string, and then the other 3 fingers are going on the third string, and they're going to do the bends. Now we can play them simultaneously. It's called a simultaneous unison bend, where you play both notes together, and then you just bend that lower string up until it sounds like the upper one. Now you'll know when you're not on because you'll hear beats or waves that sound. Hear those waves there? If they're sounding, you're not quite in. You want to get as smooth a response as you can. If you'd like to try that at home, this is called a unison bend. It's a little tricky to get at first, but try it. 3, 4, until you hear no waves. Just get the response nice. Now, that example is in the key of A pentatonic. Now, in A pentatonic, you usually play the 7th fret, but it's awfully hard to get a unison bend out of that. I can do it, but you really got to push it up there. So what I do is, rather than use my third finger and bend a whole tone, I just use my little finger and make it a semitone bend. A little easier to get your hands on. You can keep that in mind if a song ever does call for a whole tone and you just can't quite get it. We'll just move up a fret and bend a semitone, and that will work. And let's try one more example, and this is in the key of A also. And we're going to bend the 8th fret on the second string to the 5th fret on the first string. Now this here we can do a full tone bend. They usually work quite well. So first finger on the 5th fret of the first string, and your other 3 fingers go on the second string. Play them both together and bend. Simultaneous unison bend. Try this at home. Now, you may also try doing unison bends and pick the notes separately, where you actually bend the note up a full tone and then play the second note. So instead of playing them together and doing the bend, you do the bend first and play the second note. That also has a nice effect to it. That's all the time we have for tonight's show. Just to recap what we've done unison bending, whole and half tone bending, bends and releases, and ghost bends. Please join me next time when we're going to learn some more lead solo techniques, including sliding into notes, vibrato, and double stops. And again, we're going to apply those to the scales we have learned so far.